Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be going over things like ogres and ettins. So guys, today's video is going to be all about giants. Now, looking over the stat blocks of different giants and such, you can see that there's quite a lot going on with these guys. They tend to have a low AC, a ton of hit points, usually a really good strength score and a really good constitution score. Some giants more of the spellcasteries, like some of the stone, the cloud, will have good wisdom, good charisma, those kind of things. But I'm going to be not talking necessarily specifically about different kinds of giants. I'm going to be more talking about how you can use giants in your campaign setting. So in my world, giants, cyclops, ettins, anything of the sort can exist. But in my world, they tend to not exist in the common grasslands in the most... my world is pretty much set up in a way that the north end is cold, and the further you go south, the more humid and more Mediterranean-like the environment becomes. So the top is basically Arctic, and the bottom of the world, the southernmost points of the world, are more Mediterranean. The giants tend to live more in the north end of the world. But they've been known to venture out into normal lands. But that's kind of what I did with them. I made them more of a cold climate issue, if you will. Another thing I did with giants, so the first thing is finding a location that best suits them, which is what I just talked about, putting them in the north of my world, because it makes sense to put giants in a place where it's cold. They are more prone to deal with those sorts of things. Ogres are a little different. They kind of wander around. But another thing that's interesting is in the north of my world, this is going to move us on to our second point of this video, and the second point of this video is going to be called Use Them to Make Your Bad Guys Scarier. Now, I think that giants, in my opinion, are, when you plop down a mini like this ettin here onto the board, for reference, this is the ettin compared to the ogre. The ettin is obviously bigger than the ogre because the ettin is giant compared to the ogre, which is huge. The ettins a little bigger than ogres because ettins are more, let's just say ettins are bigger. But anyway, in my world, there is a giant slave trade. Now, this is something that you can't always use, like the slave trade idea, with certain groups. Obviously, some people are more sensitive to things like that, and I use it in my world just because my friends think it's I approach them with the idea of, hey, there might be slave trades in my world. I hope none of you are offended with that. And they all responded with, no, that's fine. That's perfect. So we are going with that idea. And the giant slave trade to the north is essentially this group that goes out and they hunt giants and capture them and sell them to be... There's giants are sold into slavery. Most of the giants that get sold into slavery are ogres and ettins, hill giants, some cyclops. Very rarely do you see a stone, a cloud giant in that trade. Simply, or a fire giant for that matter. Fire giants do exist up there, though. But the reason why they don't exist really up there, and it only exists in one country. It's the country that is it's a confederacy, and it's the country. It's the scary location on the excuse me. It's the scary location on the map. So essentially, individuals that travel there are going to have to deal with the giants and such, and maybe other bad guys of the sort. Now, that's the second point, is use them to make your bad guys scarier. So if your bad guy has a giant slave in my world, you know that that bad guy is loaded. He has power. He has money. It's an indicator of that. And a third thing that I'm going to say about using giants is use them. They all don't have to be stupid. I think this is a big thing. I think using Onis, which are spellcasting ogres, I think are one of my favorite giants to use, just because I think that they provide a lot more flavor to an encounter that involves giants. I also think that using Ettins are more flavorful than using just plain ogres. Obviously, Ettins with a CR of 4 are going to pack a little bit more of a punch compared to the ogre, which has a CR of 2. But one of my favorite encounters to put at low-level play is an ogre. Usually I'll throw in a couple goblins, and they'll be working for an ogre. The goblins essentially will be working for the ogre with plans to overthrow the ogre. So if the players can get in good with the goblins might help the players try to defeat the ogre. That's like a level 1 adventure, mini adventure kind of thing. Another cool thing that I've done in the past is I've had 2 ogres work together. I've had 2 ogres work together and have tried to level a city. Or they have been used as protections for a militaristic fort. I think that the use of giants and having... The giants don't have to be smart, but the use of them should be smart. In the sense of, I was running a adventure, and essentially the thing that was going on was someone needed a bow. And it was stolen by goblins, and it was hiding out in this goblin camp. The party went to go take the bow back in this goblin camp, and when they got to the goblin camp, basically there were goblins and watchtowers shooting down at the party. And what they did is they essentially were opening the gates, letting some forces run out, closing the gates again, so the party couldn't get inside of the fort. And I thought that this was really interesting. So what I did is, at the end, when the goblins realized, oh crap, we need to get people out of here, the 2 goblins in the watchtower stayed as cannon fodder. And then what they did is they released 2 ogres, and the walls opened up, and the 2 ogres made their way out as the bruisers. After defeating the 2 ogres and the goblins in the tower, they made it back into the goblin camp. But I think that it makes things a whole lot more interesting or intriguing. Why are these goblins working with these ogres? How do the goblins have the ogres? Who are the goblins working for? Because that brings up the thing is, like, goblins aren't that intelligent. They don't have that much wealth, that much power. At least in my world, they don't. So how are they able to afford these ogres to use as soldiers? And I think that that is hinting at other things. So next time when you're using giants in your world campaign one-shot, remember to think of 3 things. Location, using them to make things scarier, and 3, using them tactically. So guys, that's it for today's video, and I will see you in the next one.